Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the House Democratic Caucus. It is April 18th, Tuesday. Thanks for being here. I have just a few announcements. They will feel a little bit repetitive, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then I'm going to turn it over to two separate committees for bill reports. And then we should be wrapping it up. So again, I always tell you about the floor schedule, same floor schedule next week, 10, 1, 1, 9:30. But I keep being reminded to remind all of us that that will change, and it will, and that there will start to be token sessions that may not happen immediately. It's hard to know when that will happen, but it will happen. So those would be token sessions on Mondays. Also, Thursday this week, I just wanted to make sure that people are aware Thursday is a big schedule. We expect a longer floor on Thursday. I'd just like to remind people if we know that we're going to be on the floor longer, to let you know to be prepared with your snacks and whatever else you and your plans. Thursday should be a longer floor day this week. I also a reminder that this is the time, we've had a few questions. This is the time of the year when committees take the time to do some of their work offsite on field trips. I know all of you have probably been a part of that, but some people are wondering, why are there empty committee rooms? Well, there are field trips happening in many committees. So just be aware, if you see an empty committee room, you're looking for someone, they're likely on a field trip and it will be on their agenda. So, and that was it for my announcements. So I'm going to call up Representative McCarthy, who's going to talk to us about S17, which is an act relating to sheriff reforms.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Mike McCarthy, the chair of the House Government Operations Military Affairs Committee. I wanted to give the caucus a quick update about S17 and some of the work that we're going to be doing. We're taking a lot of testimony this week and we'll be exploring several aspects of this. So why are we talking about sheriffs? I don't think any of us have missed articles over the last few years, and particularly with some of the outgoing and incoming sheriffs, some of the issues that have come up in regard to the office of the sheriff in some of our counties. I want to start by saying that many of the sheriffs that I know and have worked with over the years are incredible. They are law enforcement officers who serve with integrity and do incredible work on behalf of our communities. But there have been a handful of folks who have done things like given bonuses that were pretty eye-popping as they went out of office to a number of their staff. There is currently a sheriff who has been indicted and will be likely going to trial for assault charges that were related to an incident with a detainee that many people have seen on video. Various ethical violations, and there's an investigation right now into financial misconduct that was the result of the periodic audits that are done on the books for sheriffs. So there've been a number of these cases over the years, including a sheriff in one county a few years ago who stepped down after there was some financial crimes that had been committed, and as part of the plea deal resigned office. But short of that or an impeachment, there's very little that folks could do, whether either a sheriff really has to resign or be impeached to be removed from office. So when sheriffs are elected every 4 years, because they're a constitutional executive judicial officer, there isn't really much oversight. The only real transparency that we get is the periodic audits that are required of the sheriff's books. And so S17, as it came over from the Senate, is really an attempt to do some of the things inside the bounds of the Constitution that we would like to see for accountability and transparency. So some of the things that are in the Senate as passed version is an expansion of the window of when those audits would happen. So instead of there being an audit triggered just when a sheriff is leaving office, some of those financial restrictions are really going to come in when a current sitting sheriff announces that they're not going to seek office, so that there's another set of eyes on some of the books there. There's an establishment of an oversight committee that will be delving into the details and membership of. And I think one of the biggest things that you're going to hear is that S17 really limits the ability. So sheriffs right now under current law have the ability to charge an administrative fee. So most of the funding that our sheriff's offices have is from contracts, whether that's with, private companies where they're doing things like posting somebody at a construction site, or they're doing patrols for a municipality that doesn't have their own law enforcement agency. They have the ability right now to charge a 5% admin overhead fee and then do things like reinvest that, or they can pay themselves more. So they have total flexibility right now in terms of how they do that. And the Senate S17 as passed really limits their ability to do that and has a 2-year phase out of the ability for them to pay themselves or their staff from those overhead funds. So we'll be looking at that in depth. There are a couple of ideas that we're going to be talking about to expand on some of the things that were in S17, including the creation of a model benefits and compensation policy, a new position potentially at the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs to help professionalize the sheriff's offices and roll out some of that model policy. And then I think the biggest question that folks who have concerns about, sheriffs who are brought up on criminal charges, they're arrested, what happens then? Can they still perform the duties of sheriff? And so we're going to explore what the limits of our ability to suspend a sheriff where there's clear due process. And that is going to be a difficult question because we've already heard from legislative counsel about some of the constitutional limitations of what we can do, but we're going to really see what we can do in order to provide relief. One sitting sheriff who I have a lot of respect for talked about, what do we do when there's a rogue sheriff? And that is the question that's really before us with S17. So I'll stop there and take questions, but I just wanted the caucus to be kind of aware that this is the bulk of our work, and you'll be hearing about where we land on some of these questions this week.
Questions? All right. Well, if you do have questions, you know who to go to, GovOps or Representative McCarthy or anyone on the committee. Okay, I'm gonna ask for the Environment and Energy Committee to come and report on S5, which is commonly known as the Affordable Heat Act, which is on the floor this week, I think. So be Representative Sibilia and are you coming? Representative Sheldon? Oh,
good morning, everyone. I'll talk a little bit about how we got to S5 here, and I'll kind of move through this quickly. There's a lot to digest here, but in the end, it's actually pretty simple what we are doing this year. So in 2020, the Vermont legislature passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, and that law did two things. First, it committed Vermont to meeting the emissions reductions that had been agreed to as part of the 2015 Paris Accords. So Vermont's Global Warming Solutions Act requires our state to reduce greenhouse gas pollution to 26% by below 2005 levels by 2025. Emissions will need to be reduced by 40% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% by 2050. So we know that Vermonters overwhelmingly want us to act on climate. And in 2019, 76% of Vermonters surveyed said that they were either very worried or somewhat worried about global warming. For this reason, I remain really grateful that our governor took a very courageous stance in urging the Trump administration in 2017 to maintain the US commitment to the Paris Accords and in 2020, supporting the Biden administration's rejoining of the Paris Climate Accords. Climate change affects all life on our planet. Secondly, the Global Warming Solutions Act required the creation of a climate action plan to be developed using a public process to meet those statutory goals. And in Vermont, those two sectors with the biggest greenhouse gas emissions are transportation and thermal. So a clean heat standard is designed to reduce thermal emissions in residential and commercial and industrial sector and was proposed as a part of the initial 2021 Climate Action Plan. So how are we proposing to do this? For the last 18 months, members of the governor's administration, representatives from many different heating fuel companies and sectors, environmental advocates, climate scientists, legal organizations, government specialists, alongside 8 different legislative committees, the Vermont Climate Council, 2 iterations of the Legislative Climate Caucus, and hundreds of Vermonters have been working to bring forward, debate, fine-tune, and improve the language that would create a clean heat standard. The bill we will vote on is the product of all of that work and will establish the clean heat standard to reduce Vermont's greenhouse gas emissions from the thermal sector. The PUC will develop the clean heat standard with assistance from 2 advisory groups, the Technical Advisory Group and the Equity Advisory Group. The Department of Public Service will be a partner in providing assistance and in completing a potential study, which will tell us about the potential market for clean heat measures and the characteristics of the workforce that is available to install those measures. S5 has the PUC developing the marketplace and the rules for implementing a clean heat standard through a public process and with these technical and equity experts. And then the 2025 legislature will have to vote to approve the rules to implement the clean heat standard, or they may change the rules. They may do nothing with the rules. They may repeal the statutory provisions of S5. And if the 2025 legislature approves, the governor will also have to approve. If we vote in 2025 to implement the clean heat standard, each year, obligated parties must retire clean heat credits, a tradable, non-tangible commodity that represents the amount of greenhouse gas emissions reductions caused by a clean heat measure. Clean heat credits may be retired by delivering fuel and technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. These are called clean heat measures. Or by contracting out or purchasing clean heat credits. The PUC would establish the number of clean heat credits that obligated parties must retire each year to set a pace for Vermont's thermal sector to achieve the greenhouse gas emissions reductions required as included in statute from the Global Warming Solutions Act. So I have heard folks say that stopping all of Vermont's emissions will do nothing to change the weather patterns that we are seeing with climate change. And in a way that disappoints a lot of my environmental friends, I have to say I mostly agree. So if Vermont can't stop climate change, then why bring forward sweeping climate change bills like the Global Warming Solutions Act and the Clean Heat Standard? So there are at least 3 really important reasons, and I bet most of us would agree with these reasons. The first is that fixed income Vermonters, rural Vermonters, and low and moderate income Vermonters are being exposed to greater and greater financial and health risks as a result of the unregulated and volatile global pricing of thermal heating fuels. Vermonters this year paid $2 more a gallon for heating oil than they did in 2021. Vermonters with the means to do so are already reducing their use of fossil fuels in order to save money. That $2 increase is a powerful motivator. The people that are being left behind are poor and rural Vermonters. Number two, larger local, state, and national governments are exerting tremendous legal pressure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as part of the 2015 Paris Accords. That's happening all across the globe and in our country. Number three, this activity is changing markets, and those changing markets are and will impact Vermonters. If we don't help Vermonters try to stay in front or at least a pace with the energy transition, it is our most vulnerable who will suffer and be left behind with more and more cost and less choice. There have been some pretty wild claims about S5. Some of those are fueled by moneyed interests. Some are from not reading the bill. Most are probably fueled simply by fear of the unknown. So I want to summarize what we are actually going to vote on. When we vote, we will be voting to create the clean heat standard in statute. We will be voting to have the PUC develop the marketplace and the rules for implementing a clean heat standard through a public process, utilizing technical and equity experts. And we will be voting to provide the 2025 legislature and governor with rules to implement the clean heat standard that they may change, pass, or repeal. That is what we're going to vote on. We will not be voting to increase the cost of Vermont's fuel. And we will not, your no vote would not protect the cost of Vermonters' fuel. I actually would say that you'd be doing the opposite, considering the volatility that we see. We are not going to be voting to have Vermonters rip out their fuel systems or install heat pumps. And we won't be voting on the clear cutting of forests or the importation of palm oil. We will be voting on information that helps us understand those types of things in 2025, those of us that are here, with a lot more certainty if we pass this bill today. So I can walk you through a number of sections of the bill. I don't know if that's the most productive use of time, Emily, but happy to take questions. Okay.
As always, just introduce yourselves for the live stream.
Josie Levitt, Grandel Chittenden. I've gotten a lot of emails from constituents saying that the House has taken out the checkbacks in the bill. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I am unclear. Both Campaign for Vermont and then I believe Vermont Chronicle parroted the post that came out, have said that we've gutted that. I'm not sure where that's come from. It is very clearly in here. And let me get to that section. But section 8131 in the bill, of section 3, in terms of rulemaking authority, we prohibit the PUC from adopting orders and filing final clean heat standard rules with the Secretary of State without specific authorization by the General Assembly. And this section would actually need to be repealed for the clean heat standard rules to take effect. We will have to come back in 2025 and the House will need to pass a bill. The Senate will need to agree and the governor will need to sign it in order to implement the clean heat standard. We're creating the standard, but we will not be able to implement it unless we vote to do so in 2025. And that is intact. Another wild claim that is out there, unfortunately scaring Vermonters.
Rep. Sims from Orleans 4. Another thing that would love to hear your clarification on that we've talked about a bunch because I've heard from constituents concerns around dyed diesel and whether fuel used for skidders and tractors would be included in the obligated parties requirements. And would love your clarification about whether that's in or out.
So we have actually spent a significant amount of time thinking about this, both in the committee, outside of the committee, with legislative counsel. It is absolutely not the intent of this bill. The intent of this bill is to obligate parties selling heating fuel. We have included language in this bill which makes that intent clear, which would exempt non-road fuels. We've also asked the PUC to come back in 2025, and we'll see if we like their answer, to tell us how to track that. And if we don't like their answer in 2025, we can change it, or we can vote no.
Great, thanks for that. And sort of similar related question, clarification about whether what we get back from the PUC is just an up or down vote, or whether there's opportunities for us based on what we learned from the potential study and other recommendations from PUC about to make adjustments to the rule or statute based on what we learn over the next years before moving forward.
We took specific testimony on exactly this question with our legislative counsel. The rules we presented to us, we will have to pass a bill specifically authorizing the implementation. We could not withstand sections of those rules. We could add additional statutory language. We could do nothing. We could repeal the whole thing. So there are a lot of choices that are available to us. I will just say, for those of you, you know that I work on the, I come from rural Vermont. I have represented a lot of poor Vermonters. I see a lot of equivalence here to the work that we did on our telephone system, where we were seeing poor and rural Vermonters being left behind as the market was growing for telecommunications infrastructure in our wealthier and more densely populated areas where our telecommunications companies could make money. There was a thriving market, and that situation really started to deteriorate. What was happening in rural Vermont, I believe, creating a pretty significant safety hazard. We spent a lot of time and stood up some pretty significant infrastructure to try and address that, which is going on now with our CUDs. I see this very, very similarly. We cannot control the global the pricing of heating fuels, and there is so much motivation to get off of them. I feel so strongly, have got to help our poorest and rural Vermonters move along with this and not get left behind. I know the people with means to get out and reduce their exposure to costly fossil fuels are doing it now. We need a stronger system to help everyone reduce their fossil fuel usage. This is a key adaptation measure for Vermonters. So I think that's it.
No further questions now. You do know, as always, please reach out to anybody on environment and energy, or Representative Sibilia or Sheldon or anyone. Okay, that's it today. So thanks very much. Oh, whoop, got another hand up. Go ahead.
Molly Burke, Brattleboro. Tomorrow at this time, or sorry, not exactly at this time, at noon, representatives from the National Guard will be coming and talking about the issue of sexual assault in the Guard. This is sponsored by the Women's Caucus. This has been a long-standing concern of the caucus going back years, and we've had various reports, various things happening, and I think it would be great to get an update on the situation right now. So I hope you can join us. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Esme Cole, Windsor 6. I have crafted a letter for Milk with Dignity to sign on if legislators would like to encourage Hannafords to adopt the labor standards for their immigrant farm workers for the milk that they provide in their stores. So if you'd like to sign on, come see me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great week.